I never imagined the sound of laughter could hurt this much, but that night, it did. It was past midnight, the kind of hour where the city sleeps, but your thoughts don't. The moonlight slipped through my penthouse window, painting everything silver. My desk, my untouched glass of whiskey, and the phone that wouldn't stop lighting up. At first, I ignored it. Then I saw the name on the screen. Evelyn. My heart sank. Evelyn, the woman I thought was my forever. Her message was short, careless even. Don't wait up tonight. Long meeting. A meeting. That word used to sound harmless, but something about the way she wrote it, the way the emoji was missing, told me this wasn't just business. I should have let it go, but you know that feeling, right? When every instinct in your gut screams that something's wrong. So I did what I swore I'd never do. I checked her location, and there it was, not at her office downtown, not even close. Her phone was at the Crescent Hotel, a place known for candlelit dinners, champagne rooms, and secrets that never see daylight. My pulse started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Every second that passed fed a new emotion, confusion, disbelief, and then anger. I grabbed my keys. By the time I reached the hotel, the rain had started. A storm. Fitting, really. The valet recognized me immediately. "Good evening, Mr. Carter," he said, holding out his umbrella. I didn't reply, just walked past him, straight through the revolving doors, trying to keep my breathing steady. The lobby smelt of roses and expensive lies. And there she was. Evelyn, my Evelyn, sitting at a corner table in a red dress. I bought her. The one she said made her feel unstoppable. Only now she wasn't wearing it for me. Across from her sat a man, tall, confident, smiling that kind of smile men wear when they think they've won. He reached across the table and tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. She laughed, the same laugh I fell in love with, only now. It cut deeper than any blade ever could. I froze. For a moment, I thought maybe I was dreaming, that I'd wake up any second, back in our bed, her hand resting softly on my chest. But no, this was real, painfully real. I wanted to storm over, to shout, to demand answers, but something stopped me. It wasn't weakness, it was clarity. In that instant, I realized I didn't need to confront her. Not yet, because the best revenge isn't loud, it's silent, it's patient, it's perfectly timed. So I turned around and walked out, not because I forgave her, but because I had a plan forming, one she would never see coming. As I drove away, the city lights blurred through the rain like tears I refused to shed. I whispered to myself, "You chose the wrong man to betray, Evelyn." That night, something inside me broke, and something far more dangerous woke up in its place. Before everything fell apart, we were perfect, or at least that's what I told myself. Evelyn wasn't just another person in my life, she was my life. The kind of woman who walked into a room and made time stop. She had that quiet confidence, the kind that didn't demand attention but owned it anyway. We met 3 years ago at a charity gala downtown. I remember it vividly. She was standing by the balcony, staring out at the skyline, holding a glass of champagne like it was part of her. Her dress shimmered under the city lights, and when she turned to look at me, it was like every sound in the room just disappeared. I was a nobody back then, a startup founder trying to prove to the world, and to myself, that I was worth something. She, on the other hand, was already working for one of the top marketing firms in the city. Ambitious, elegant, untouchable. But when our eyes met that night, something clicked. Maybe it was the loneliness we both hid behind perfect smiles. Or maybe it was fate, the cruel kind that makes you fall in love just so it can watch you break later. We talked for hours that night. About dreams, failures, fears, the kind of things you don't usually share with strangers. By the end of it, she said, "You're different, Daniel. Most people talk about what they want. You talk about what you'll build." That line stayed with me. And just like that, Evelyn became my muse. Weeks turned into months. We were inseparable. Sunday brunches at our favorite cafe, long drives with no destination, late nights where we'd fall asleep on the couch after watching movies neither of us remembered. She believed in me when no one else did. When my company almost collapsed, she was the one who held me together. I can still hear her saying, "You're stronger than you think, Daniel. Failure doesn't define you. Getting up does." That kind of support. It blinds you. You start thinking love like that could never turn cold. So when things started changing, I refused to see it. At first, it was subtle. The late-night work calls, the business trips that didn't line up with her firm's calendar, the way she'd keep her phone face down, like it was guarding secrets I wasn't meant to know. But love makes fools out of the best of us. I kept making excuses for her. She's just stressed, I told myself. She's building her career. Still, deep down, I knew. The woman who once couldn't go a day without calling me now barely looked up from her screen when I entered the room. And yet, I stayed. Because I remembered who she used to be. The Evelyn who would send me surprise lunch deliveries when I was too busy working to eat. The Evelyn who would fall asleep with her head on my shoulder while we planned our future. We had plans. Big ones. A house outside the city. A family. Maybe even a business together someday. She even designed our dream home on paper. I found that sketch a week before everything fell apart. Her handwriting on the corner still read, "Our forever home." Funny how two words can haunt you. Looking back now, maybe I should have realized something was off when her smiles started feeling rehearsed, when her hugs became shorter, when she stopped saying "I love you" first, but I held on. I kept trying to fix what was already broken, because that's what love does. It makes you fight battles that were lost long before they began. Still, there were moments that kept the illusion alive, like that weekend trip to Aspen. She surprised me with it, said we both needed a break. For 2 days, it felt like old times. Snow falling outside our cabin, her laughter echoing against the firelight. She kissed me like she meant it, and for a moment I believed we were okay again. But what I didn't know then was that the trip wasn't about saving us. It was about easing her guilt before the truth came crashing down. Sometimes I wonder if she loved me at all, or if I was just a chapter in her story, a stepping stone to something or someone better. Either way, that love I thought would last forever. It became the very reason I almost lost myself, but not for long. Because when love turns into betrayal, something inside you shifts. You stop being the victim. You start becoming the story's author, and mine was just getting started. They say the truth doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. It started small, almost invisible. The kind of changes you brush off because it's easier to pretend everything's fine than admit it's not. Evelyn used to call me every morning just to say good luck before I headed to work. One morning, she didn't. Then the next, by the third day, I realized it wasn't forgetfulness. It was habit, fading away. She started dressing differently too. Not that I ever wanted to control what she wore. Evelyn had always been effortlessly elegant. But this was different. Designer outfits, new perfume, the kind that cost more than my first car. When I asked about it, she smiled and said, "New client. Gotta look the part." I wanted to believe her. God, I really did. But that night when she came home late, her laughter echoed down the hall. Not the kind of laughter you have after a business meeting. It was soft, breathy, guilty. When I asked how the meeting went, she hesitated, just for a second, before answering. And that second was enough to plant a seed of doubt that would grow into something far darker. Days turned into weeks, and with each one, she slipped a little further away from me. Her phone became her lifeline, always in her hand, always face down. The woman who used to leave her phone on the counter now took it with her to the bathroom, to the shower, even to bed. One night, curiosity got the better of me. While she was in the shower, her phone buzzed. Once, twice, then stopped. I glanced at it. No name. Just a number. A text preview flashed across the screen. "Can't wait to see you again. Same time tomorrow?" My chest tightened. My hands went cold. I wanted to unlock the phone to see everything. But something in me froze. Maybe I was scared of confirming what I already knew. Maybe I just wasn't ready for the truth. So instead, I did nothing. And that's the cruel thing about doubt. It eats you alive in silence. The next morning, she acted normal. Kissed me goodbye. Told me she had another client dinner. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Like someone who'd rehearsed their lies 100 times. I spent that evening pacing around our apartment, staring at my phone, debating whether to call her, or track her, or simply walk away. But I didn't do any of those things. Instead, I poured myself a drink and waited, like a fool waiting for closure that would never come. At midnight, she came home, her hair slightly messy, her lipstick smudged, but not in a way I could call her out on. "Long meeting?" I asked, my tone colder than I intended. She smiled faintly. "Yeah, sorry, it ran late. You know how clients can be." I nodded, pretending I did. Then I watched her walk into the bathroom, my reflection staring back at me in the mirror, tired, suspicious, and quietly breaking. From that night on, I started noticing everything. The new necklace she claimed was a gift from the office. The faint scent of cologne on her jacket that wasn't mine. The way she started, turning away when I reached for her. Hand love used to make me blind. Now it made me paranoid. I began keeping track of small details, where she said she was going and when she said she'd be back. And soon, the lies began to overlap. One Friday, she told me she was meeting her best friend, Clara. But when I casually mentioned it to Clara a few days later, she looked confused. "What are you talking about? I haven't seen Evelyn in weeks." My world tilted. Every doubt, every fear I'd buried came rushing back like a wave I couldn't escape. That night, I didn't confront her. Not yet, because confrontation ends things, and I wasn't ready for it to end. Not until I understood why. So I watched, waited, listened. I started noticing her patterns. How she'd leave at exactly 6:30 p.m. every Tuesday and Thursday. How she'd spend an extra 20 minutes in traffic on her way home. And then came the final straw, the night of our anniversary. Had planned everything. Dinner at her favorite restaurant, her favorite wine, and the same music that played the night I proposed to her. But Evelyn never showed up. At first, she didn't answer her phone. Then, an hour later, I got a text. "Sorry, emergency meeting. Rain check on our anniversary." I remember sitting there surrounded by candlelight, alone, while couples around me laughed, held hands, and shared stories they'd remember forever. And me? I was living a story I wished I could forget. When she finally came home past midnight, I didn't say a word. I just looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I realized I wasn't looking at the woman I fell in love with. I was looking at a stranger wearing her face. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a rough patch. This was betrayal dressed as love. Even though I didn't know how yet, I knew one thing for sure. She had crossed a line, and soon she'd realize I wasn't the kind of man who gets left in the dark for long. They say the truth will set you free, but that's a lie. The truth doesn't set you free. It breaks you first. It shatters everything you thought was real and leaves you standing in the ruins of your own trust. And for me, that moment came 2 weeks after our anniversary night. By then, Evelyn's lies had become routine. I could predict them. The excuses, the rehearsed sighs, the carefully timed apologies. But I was done pretending. I needed proof. So, one night, I followed her. She said she was going to a late client dinner again. Same story, different night. I waited until she drove off, then took my car and tailed her, keeping just enough distance so she wouldn't notice. The city looked different that night. The streets were slick from rain, the lights reflecting off the asphalt like fractured memories. She drove across town, far from her office, far from anywhere she had business being. Then she turned into the Crescent Hotel. That name burnt itself into my memory the moment I saw it on her GPS weeks before. And now, there it was, glowing in gold letters against the night sky, mocking me. I parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. When I entered the lobby, the receptionist smiled politely. "Good evening, sir. Checking in?" I forced a half smile. "No, just meeting someone." I scanned the room. Couples laughed over wine, music drifted softly from the bar, and for a second, I wondered if maybe I was wrong, if maybe she was really here for work. But then I saw her, Evelyn, my Evelyn, standing by the elevator. With him, same man as before, same smirk, the same expensive suit that screamed confidence and deceit. He leaned in and whispered something in her ear, and she laughed. That same light, careless laugh that used to belong to me. Then she reached for his hand, and just like that, the world went silent. I felt every breath leave my body. My knees almost gave out, but I forced myself to stand still, to watch, because I needed to see it with my own eyes. No more doubts. No more excuses. They stepped into the elevator together. The doors closed, and that was it. Every moment, every kiss, every promise we ever made, gone. All replaced by a single image I could never unsee. I stood there for what felt like hours, staring at the elevator doors like maybe they'd open again and she'd come running out, apologizing, telling me it was all a mistake. But she didn't, because it wasn't. I left the hotel before they came back down. I couldn't stomach watching anymore. The rain had started again, hard and cold, soaking through my shirt as I walked back to my car. I didn't feel angry. Not yet. just hollow, like someone had reached inside me and switched off the lights. I drove aimlessly for hours, ending up by the waterfront, the same spot where I'd once promised her forever. The city skyline shimmered across the waves, beautiful and distant. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, and whispered, "Why, Evelyn? Why wasn't I enough?" But the only answer was the sound of the rain. When I got home, I expected her to be there, pretending nothing happened. And I was right. She was already in bed when I walked in, pretending to be asleep. Her phone was on the nightstand, face down, just like always. I stared at her for a long time, at the woman I loved more than life itself, the woman who'd just destroyed me without blinking. Part of me wanted to wake her, to demand the truth, but another part, the colder, quieter part, told me not to, because I finally understood something that night. She wasn't just lying to me, she was lying to herself. And if I confronted her now, she'd just twist it, manipulate it, play the victim, and I'd end up forgiving her like a fool. No, not this time. So I did something else. Instead, I picked up her phone. The screen lit up with a notification, a message from the same number as before. Tonight was perfect. You're incredible. My jaw tightened. I opened the chat. There were months of messages, late night, confessions, plans, jokes, things they shared that used to belong only to us. And then I saw it, a photo of them, together, smiling, arms wrapped around each other. The caption read, "To new beginnings." My stomach turned. New beginnings. While I was still living in our old one, I didn't cry, I didn't yell, I just went numb. Then I set the phone back exactly where it was and lay down beside her. She stirred slightly, mumbling something in her sleep. I watched her for a moment. The peaceful expression on her face, the calm breathing of someone who believed they'd gotten away with it, and in that moment, I made a promise, not to her, to myself. I wouldn't confront her. I wouldn't beg for an explanation. I'd make her feel what I felt. I'd make her world crumble, piece by piece, just like she did to mine. And the best part? She'd never see it coming. That night changed me, not in some poetic, redemptive way. No, it broke something inside me that would never quite heal again. For the next few days, I moved through life like a ghost. I went to work. I smiled when I had to, and I nodded through meetings. But my mind wasn't there. It was replaying every lie Evelyn had ever told me. Every "I love you." Every "you're the only one." Now, they all sounded like lines from a play she'd memorized perfectly. At home, things were eerily normal. She still cooked dinner, still asked about my day, still kissed me goodnight, and that was the worst part. How do you sit across from someone you love, knowing they've already chosen someone else? How do you answer their questions, knowing every word from their lips is a lie? It's a special kind of torture, one that eats at you from the inside. I'd stare at her across the dinner table and imagine the conversations she'd had with him, the laughter, the plans, the stolen moments that used to be mine. And every time she looked up and smiled, pretending everything was fine, it took everything in me not to scream. But I didn't. I stayed quiet, because anger burns fast. But silence lasts. At night, I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling while she slept beside me. I'd hear her breathing, steady and peaceful, like she didn't have a care in the world. Meanwhile, my thoughts spiraled. Every memory we'd built together started to rot under the weight of what she'd done. The night we met, our first trip, her promise that she'd never hurt me. All lies, all meaningless. I started to lose track of time. Days bled into nights, nights into something darker. I stopped eating, stopped calling friends, stopped doing anything that reminded me of the life I used to have. It wasn't heartbreak anymore, it was humiliation, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes you question your worth. And that's when something inside me snapped. It happened one evening. While I was sitting alone in my study, I'd been staring at an old photo, Evelyn and I, smiling at a beach in Santorini. The sunlight on her face, my arm around her shoulders. We looked happy, real. But now I could see the cracks, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, the way she was already drifting somewhere else. I dropped the photo. It hit the floor and shattered, glass splintering across the hardwood. That sound, that sharp, sudden break, woke me up, because in that instant, I realized I was done mourning someone who was still alive. I was done crying over a woman who didn't deserve my pain. If she could lie so effortlessly, if she could destroy everything we had without hesitation, then maybe it was time I stopped being the victim. I got up, walked to the mirror and looked at myself, the man staring. Back wasn't the same one who used to bring her flowers for no reason or write her notes just to make her smile. That man was gone. What remained was colder, sharper, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel broken, I felt focused. I began to think clearly again, strategically. Evelyn had taken everything from me emotionally, but practically, she still had things to lose. Her career, her reputation, the perfect image she'd built for herself, the woman who had it all. And that's when the seed of revenge began to take root. It wasn't about anger anymore. It was about balance, about restoring what she'd taken, not just my trust, but my power. That night, as she slept beside me, I whispered softly, "You think you've won, Evelyn, but the game's just beginning." The next morning, I was calm. Too calm. She noticed it immediately. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice carrying that sweet concern she'd mastered so well. I smiled. Never better. And for the first time since the betrayal, it wasn't a lie, because I finally had direction. I wasn't lost anymore. I was planning. Over the next few days, I started collecting details. Her routines, her meetings, her passwords, every secret she thought she'd hidden. I found every piece of her carefully constructed world. I mapped out. I didn't rush it. Revenge isn't about speed, it's about precision. And as I pieced everything together, the anger inside me turned into something else, control. I was no longer reacting to her betrayal. I was orchestrating what came next. But before any of that could begin, I needed to understand why. Why did she do it? Was I not enough? Was it boredom? Power? Excitement? The questions haunted me, and I knew if I wanted closure, if I wanted my revenge to mean anything, I needed the truth straight from her lips. So I decided to give her what she'd been pretending to have all along. The perfect evening, a dinner, just the two of us. Candlelight, music, her favorite wine. Except this time, I wasn't planning a night to remember. I was planning the night she'd never forget. Revenge, I learnt, is a science, not a shout. It's a quiet architecture of small, precise moves that build to a collapse so complete the person responsible never sees it coming. I didn't want drama. I wanted undoing. I wanted her carefully polished life to crack, legally, publicly, and where it hurt most, her image of being untouchable. The first thing I did was breathe. When you plan something big, panic is your enemy. Calmness is the weapon. I stopped acting out of hurt and started acting like someone who's in control. Step 1. Evidence. She had given me the first clue, her phone. I didn't violate her privacy the way criminals do in movies. She left doors open by mistake and reinforced them with lies. The messages I'd seen were my starting line. But I needed more than texts and a single photo. I needed a pattern, dates, receipts, travel logs, proof that this wasn't a single mistake but a choice. So I gathered everything I could, legally and cleanly. Old messages, screenshots, copies of emails she bragged about that mentioned special meetings, and the hotel booking she'd made under a false name. I pulled together timelines, every late night, every unexplained trip, every canceled plan, and mapped them against the messages. When details overlapped, a picture emerged. This wasn't impulsive. It was deliberate. Next, I rebuilt her life as if I were an investigator. I traced her social calendar and watched the patterns she had left in plain sight. I called contacts who'd worked with her, discreetly, asked neutral questions, and listened. People love to help, especially when a story is wrapped in success and scandal. Casual conversations gave me more context than dramatic confrontations ever could. I also made sure I didn't act alone. You don't dismantle a life with theater. You dismantle it with allies. I found a lawyer, not the kind that shouts in court, but the kind that thinks 3 steps ahead. I explained what I had, proof of an ongoing affair, possible conflicts of interest at her firm, and evidence she'd used company time for private meetings. The lawyer's face didn't show shock. It showed calculation. That was all I needed. The next move was surgical. Leverage. Evelyn's career was built on reputation. Her clients trusted her. Her firm trusted her. Her brand relied on a polished image of loyalty, discretion, and competence. If that image cracked, everything beneath it could shift. With my lawyer's guidance, I prepared a precise package, a non-emotional, factual file that showed the timeline, the messages, and clear examples of how her personal actions spilt over into professional risk. It was cold. It was detailed. It didn't accuse. It documented. Then I chose my audience. Not the world, not yet. First, the people who mattered, the partners at her firm, the top client who had been promised exclusivity, and one carefully selected journalist known for fair, fact-based pieces on corporate ethics. I didn't scream betrayal. I presented risk. I showed how her private choices could legally expose the firm and cost them clients. Businesses act fast when money and image are threatened. Simultaneously, I staged the social exposure. The affair lived in private messages and late-night dinners. I let it step into the light in a way that hurt where it should. I reached out, not to shame her publicly with slander, but to inform the people who had been closest to her, mutual friends, the family that had once welcomed me into their home, and the woman she'd claimed to be. I didn't rant or plead. I showed facts, the same clean file, the same timelines, and the same photos. The reactions were immediate: confusion, disappointment, and quiet distance. People who had trusted her came forward with memories and small corroborating details. The social net tightened. There was also a financial angle. She'd benefited from my business connections. She'd used our shared status as cover in ways I couldn't overlook. My lawyer advised me to audit certain transactions and look for conflicts of interest. If there were overlaps between her client work and her private meetings, that was another line to walk, and a legal lever to use. Money and credibility go hand in hand. When one falters, the other follows. But I'm not a man who savors cruelty for cruelty's sake. I wanted her to understand that betrayal isn't only a personal wound, it's a pattern that has consequences. So every move I made was proportional, precise, and contained. I didn't want to ruin her life. I wanted to take away the armor she used to hurt me. Every night I updated my timeline, polished the file, and rehearsed what I would say. Never angry, always factual. I practiced calmness until it became my natural state. Because explosions are noisy and quick, poison is slow and leaves a mark that doesn't fade. Then I set the final phase in motion. First, an anonymous tip to one of her firm's partners with the legal file attached and a short note. You deserve to know where risks are coming from. It arrived like a quiet alarm. They checked it. They panicked. They scheduled a meeting. Do businesses act swiftly? They do when credibility is on the line. Second, I chose a moment to confront her, not to beg or cry, but to deliver the message that would cut deeper than gossip. At dinner, under the soft lights, I'd planned to recreate the life we once promised one another. I sat across from her with the file on the table. No yelling, no tears, just the facts, a glass of wine, and a voice that didn't tremble. I watched her face shift from calm to pale as she realized the net had closed. I let her watch the proof. I let her swallow what she'd done. And then I watched her world begin to fray. The partner called her in. Clients whispered. Friends stopped answering messages. The man she'd been seeing? He vanished from her life as if the paper I'd laid out burnt the bridge between them. What felt satisfying wasn't the spectacle. It was the balance being restored. She had taken trust from me, so I took away the illusion she'd built. She had wanted to live a double life. She was now forced to face the consequences in the daylight. As the aftershocks began, emails, HR meetings, awkward silences at social events, I sat in the quiet and felt something unfamiliar. Closure not born from revenge alone, but from action that was fair, clean, and inevitable. But the final act, the one that would mark the true climax of this story, was still ahead, because exposing the truth was one thing. Watching her reconcile what she'd lost, that was another. And she would learn, in a way she hadn't expected, that actions are heavier than words. There's a certain silence that comes before a life falls apart. Not the loud kind filled with shouting and chaos, the quiet kind. The kind where everything looks calm on the surface, but underneath, everything is shifting, breaking, and ready to explode. That silence filled the air the morning Evelyn's world finally cracked. It happened at her firm's annual gala, the one event she'd spent months preparing for. A night of glittering chandeliers, champagne, and speeches about integrity and trust. The irony couldn't have been sharper if I'd written the script myself. I wasn't supposed to be there. Not anymore. But I was invited. quietly through one of the senior partners who'd seen the file I sent. "You might want to be in the room," he said, his voice calm but heavy with meaning. I arrived late, dressed in the same tailored black suit I wore the night she told me she loved me for the first time. Ironic, isn't it? How symbols of love can become instruments of closure. The ballroom shimmered with gold and silver, music playing softly in the background. Evelyn stood near the stage, radiant as always, her smile wide, her confidence untouched. She looked untouchable, like a queen in her kingdom, but kingdoms fall, don't they? Especially when they're built on lies. Her boss, Mr. Langford, took the stage for his opening remarks. I watched from the crowd, hands folded, heart steady. Then came the moment. Subtle, almost invisible to anyone who didn't know what was about to happen. Langford's tone shifted mid-speech. His words, once warm and polished, turned brittle. He cleared his throat. "Tonight, before we continue, we must address an unfortunate matter that's come to light." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Evelyn's smile faltered. She glanced at her team, confused. Langford continued, "It has been brought to our attention that one of our senior consultants has engaged in behavior that compromises the ethical standards of this firm. Private relationships with clients, misuse of company time, breach of confidentiality." The room went still. Forks froze halfway to plates. Glasses trembled slightly on tables. Evelyn's face drained of color. He didn't name her. Not yet. He didn't have to. The truth was already heavy in the air, settling like smoke after a gunshot. Then came the words that finished the job. Effective immediately. "Ms. Evelyn Cross will be placed under review pending termination." There it was. Clean, professional, and devastating. A collective gasp rippled across the hall. Some people turned to look at her. Others pretended not to. Her best friend from work stared down at her napkin. The man she'd cheated with? He was there too, his jaw tight, pretending he hadn't just been caught in the same storm. Evelyn stood frozen, a statue in red silk. When she finally looked up, her eyes found mine across the room. For a second, everything else disappeared. The whispers, the lights, the murmurs. Just her and me. Her expression was a cocktail of shock, fear, and realization. She knew. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just gave her a slow, steady nod, the kind that says, "You did this." I only revealed it. She started moving toward me, but Langford called her name, asking her to step into the boardroom for a private conversation, the kind of talk that ends careers. She hesitated, eyes still locked on me. For the first time, she looked small, and I'll be honest, a part of me felt the satisfaction burn through my chest like fire, but another part, it almost pitied her. Almost. As the night carried on, whispers turned to speculation. Phones came out. Screens lit up with messages and headlines. One of the journalists I'd quietly sent my file to had timed their story perfectly. Top consultant under ethics investigation after secret affair scandal. By midnight, her reputation was unraveling conversation. Online, thread by thread. I stepped outside into the cool night air. Behind me, the muffled chaos continued, her world collapsing in real time. I stood beneath the glowing city skyline, taking a slow breath, feeling the weight of months of betrayal finally lift. Justice didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered. And tonight, it whispered her name. Minutes later, I heard footsteps. Evelyn burst out of the building, her heels clattering on the marble steps. Her eyes were glassy, mascara streaked from tears she couldn't hide anymore. "Why?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "Why would you do this to me?" I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said quietly, "I didn't do this to you, Evelyn. You did this to yourself. I just stopped protecting your lies." She tried to speak, but no words came. The storm had passed, and all that was left was silence. I turned and walked away, each step echoing with a strange mix of power and peace. That night, I didn't celebrate. I didn't toast victory. I just went home, poured myself a single glass of whiskey, and sat by the window, the same window where it all began, when that one text changed everything. Only this time, the silence didn't hurt. It healed, because for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was free. That night after the gala, I didn't sleep. Not because I was haunted, but because my mind was still. For the first time in months, I didn't replay arguments or imagine her laughter with someone else. I just sat there, listening to the rain tapping on the glass, the same rain that had fallen the night I caught her. Only this time it didn't sound like sadness, it sounded like release. When the morning came, the city outside felt lighter, as if the air had shifted. My phone buzzed with messages, co-workers, friends, and even a few people from her firm who wanted to talk about what happened. I ignored them all. I didn't want gossip. I didn't want applause, because revenge, when done right, isn't about applause. It's about balance. A few days later, I heard she'd resigned. Rumor had it she left the city. Some said to start over, others said to hide. I didn't ask, and I didn't care to confirm. Her chapter in my life was over. Still, I couldn't help but think about the woman I once loved. Not the liar she became, but the version of her before it all went wrong. The one who made Sunday mornings feel sacred, who looked at me like I was her safe place. I wondered when that version of her disappeared. Maybe she was never real, or maybe she was, and she just lost her way. But that wasn't my burden to carry anymore. Over the next few weeks, I rebuilt what she tried to break. I poured my energy into my business, not out of anger, but out of purpose. I reconnected with old friends I'd neglected while drowning in suspicion. I started running again, reading again, living again. Every morning, I reminded myself, you can't heal if you keep staring at the wound, and slowly, piece by piece, the wound became a scar, not something to hide, but something to remember. A reminder of how far I'd come. There was one moment that stands out, a small one, but it changed everything. I was walking by the park one evening, the sun setting behind the skyline. A couple sat on a bench nearby, laughing, holding hands, completely lost in their world. For a brief second, I felt that old sting, the jealousy, the memory, the why not me. But then it passed, because I realized something profound. I didn't envy them. I pitied who I used to be. Someone who thought love meant losing yourself for someone else. That's when I knew I'd truly moved on. Months later, I received an email from Evelyn. No subject line, just a short message. I know you probably hate me. I don't blame you. I've lost everything. My job, my reputation, and honestly, myself. But I needed you to know. I'm sorry. Not just for what I did to you, but for what I became. You didn't destroy me. You forced me to face myself. Maybe one day, I'll thank you for that. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not angry. Not vindicated. Just quiet. I didn't reply. Because forgiveness doesn't always need to be spoken. Sometimes, silence is the answer. I didn't need her apology to be free. I already was. Looking back now, I see everything differently. What I thought was the end of my story was actually the beginning. Her betrayal didn't break me. It rebuilt me. It stripped away the illusions and showed me who I truly was, and what I was capable of. If I learned anything from all this, it's that revenge doesn't always mean destruction. Sometimes, revenge is standing tall when they expected you to fall. It's rebuilding your life so beautifully that the person who hurt you becomes irrelevant. It's learning that peace is the sharpest form of justice, and the truth is, Evelyn didn't lose everything because of me. She lost everything because of herself. I just held up the mirror. Now, when people ask me if I'd do it all again, if I'd expose her, if I'd plan it the same way, I tell them this: I don't regret seeking justice, but I regret how long I let her betrayal define me, because the real revenge wasn't the exposure or the downfall or the whispers. The real revenge was my silence. My peace, my freedom. I moved out of the penthouse, sold the car, traveled for a while. Somewhere between the airports and sunsets, I stopped thinking about her altogether. One evening, standing on a quiet beach, I realized something I wish I'd known sooner. Sometimes, the universe doesn't give you what you deserve right away. It waits. It watches, and when the time is right, it gives you justice in the form of clarity. I still think about that night at the hotel sometimes. The rain, the laughter, the heartbreak. But it no longer stings. It feels distant, like a movie I once saw, where I was both the villain and the hero, because that's the truth of betrayal. It doesn't just expose them. It exposes you. It shows you what you'll do when pushed, what you'll sacrifice, and what you'll become. And me, I became stronger, sharper, quieter, the kind of man who doesn't chase revenge anymore because he already lived it. Now I chase peace. So if you've ever been betrayed, if someone's broken your trust, shattered your heart, or made you question your worth, remember this: don't waste your life plotting their destruction. Build yours instead, because nothing unsettles a betrayer more than seeing the person they broke Rise higher than ever.